Before we start, I just want to thank you all for your patience. We had a few little technical glitches on top of a few little Mother Nature threatened glitches. And so my heart goes out to you all that you made the effort to come. And I also just want to say, because every time I see this picture of Toller, I'm kind of amazed. You will notice that he affected wearing, or not wearing, but always having paint-stained fingernails. So you will look, and hands and elbows as well. They're always very painty, and it's kind of a Toller thing. And here's this beautiful book. So, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Philippa, and it makes me very, very proud that you would make space in your day to come and celebrate a Canadian icon, a Canadian artist, my brother, Toller Cranston. Order of Canada, two-time Olympian, member of multiple halls of fame, honorary doctorate, and who, by the way, has very deep roots right here in Arnprior. Our great-grandfather was among the first people to build and settle in Arnprior a billion years ago. He was the first doctor in town. My grandfather was also a doctor, and they lived in that red brick house just almost behind this theater across from the library where my father and his four brothers were born. And I've spent every summer of my life at the family summer cottage just down the river at Marshall's Bay. So I feel a very profound connection to this area as well. And also incredibly important, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the book was designed in Arnprior. The author is from Arnprior. The talent is from Arnprior. And now I'm super happy to say the audience for today is also largely Arnprior, although Almonte people and everybody else are very welcome. My grandmother was a Toller. My Mary Frances, her name was Mary Frances Toller. The Tollers married into the Bryson family across the river. And my cousin Jane Toller has recently been reelected as the mayor, or the reeve, I think it is, of the Pontiac. So Toller is a family name, and it's not extremely rare. I feel like I'm being inquisitioned here. This is very bright light. So let me see. So the Toller family name is not unusual, but there was an instance that was widely reported when someone once said to Toller, "Oh, I know someone whose name was Toller," and he said, "Nonsense, there's only one." And in fact, there really was kind of only one. He was Toller. You don't have to say Cranston to know who he is. There's not a person in the world who ever had anything to do with figure skating that hasn't heard of or know of or have seen or have met or have heard about Toller Cranston. Most Canadians know Toller as a skater, of course, but Toller considered himself simply an artist. He couldn't stand to be referred to as a skater who painted. He was just an artist. And to let you know a little bit more about my brother, Toller Cranston, this video you will see on the screen.
One thing that I think was something that I learned as a skater and brought into my painting was the idea of rhythm and never-ending line. And probably if I'd been a boxer, I would have painted like this and very geometrically. But with skating, the wonderful thing is you have movement without movement. And when I skate, I never end something. I always skate and I move. And my painting is the same. I just love a never-ending line that just keeps going and going and going. And that is really because of my skating.
Here's Cranston at his most imaginative, combining his art and his skating in a TV production called Strawberry Ice. His paintings came to life on screen, and he became a character in their fantasy world.
With this particular show, which was very autobiographical, something that certainly was the main theme was the artist becoming the victim of their fantasy. There's no doubt that I am a victim of my fantasies.
Toller Cranston brought fresh ideas and new life to the world of skating. But in World Olympic competition, he also, in a sense, was a victim of his fantasies. For a long while, the judges didn't accept his flamboyant style, his highest finish in World or Olympic competition being an Olympic bronze. We asked what effect the lack of a gold medal had on him.
One thing about not winning a medal has done for me is that it has kept my career going. And I've tried a lot harder than all the other contemporaries that competed at the same time because I still had something to prove. Certainly a John Curry, a Dorothy Hamill, Peggy Fleming, they don't have to prove themselves to anybody because there's the golden medal and they've got it and they were Olympic champion and that's a mighty big title. But for myself, like Janet Lynn, we still have something to say. We still have something to prove. And with this competition, I'm actually allowed to sort of pit my abilities one more time. And although I'm older, it's as though time has stopped and I've been given that one more chance.
Well, with that one more chance, he's still been proving things. Earlier in the year on the Pro Skate Tour, he had 3 firsts and a second. Now, in the International Professional Figure Skating Championships, Toller Cranston.
That combination showed the class that Toller Cranston has. A triple jump right into a beautiful stag in his own inimitable style. He really is, in my opinion, not only a classy performer, but a superb technician and just a marvelous, overall, great skater of all time.
There's a whole generation, though, that may not know Toller Cranston and what he did for the sport. 6-time Canadian champion, the numbers and everything. But here's the other things. Member of the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame, Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, Canadian Figure Skating Hall of Fame, Order of Canada, Walk of Fame. Yet Toller Cranston didn't do it for any of that stuff. And some people liked his style. Some people didn't like his style, whether it was skating or whether it was broadcasting or storytelling. The thing about Toller is you couldn't ignore him.
Absolutely not. And he took a rather staid at times sport and he made it come alive. He was electric. It was so exciting to watch. And he had a universal appeal. It certainly wasn't just here in Canada. As Brian Orser said, he changed the sport worldwide.
So I don't know how many 100 times, it still gives me goosebumps. It's kind of incredible that was more than half a century ago. It's amazing. So just 2 days ago, on January 23rd, 2026, we marked the 11th anniversary of Toller's passing at age 65 at his home in Mexico. 2026, as you all should know, is an Olympic year. We're just about to head into several weeks of Olympic madness and excitement. And it also marks the 50th anniversary of Toller's Olympic bronze medal. So I've been thinking a lot about Toller these last few days and about this day that we're here together sharing today, and about the Olympics and about his accomplishments and about what brought us here and about what got us here. And maybe it began like this. When I was 10 years old, I reached the provincial finals of the Royal Canadian Legion Public Speaking Contest with a speech that was entitled, "Why I Am Proud to Be a Canadian." That was 1956 in Swastika, Ontario. And I still have the little trophy. It's very little. And yes, I am still proud, although the reasons have moved far beyond fish, fur, and freedom. My mother taught me to use gestures when I would practice my speech. So I'm still proud, but for different reasons these days. When I was 18, I was there, part of a very drab, bundled-up crowd that assembled on Parliament Hill when the Canadian flag was raised for the very first time. I remember that it was an incredibly gray, very dreary day, and there wasn't a whiff of breeze, and the old red ensign was solemnly lowered, and the new maple leaf flag was hauled to the top, and it just hung there, looking pretty listless. And I remember thinking, oh, geez, it's just a leaf, like, what? But I was wrong. It was our flag, and it was our time, and we really have never looked back. And we all knew that we were there making history. We knew it then, and we definitely all shared something that day, even though it was gray and dreary. I don't know why Lorraine Harper, the wife of the then Prime Minister, thought to save the flag that was flying on the Peace Tower the day that Toller passed away, but she did. That flag is here with us today. I didn't know at the time that a new flag is put on the Peace Tower every single day, and anybody can get one. You can request to have one. You must be a Canadian, obviously, and there's only one per family. And right now, the waiting list is currently in excess of 100 years. So I know that Toller would have been extremely proud that he jumped the queue, and certainly I'm very honored that the Prime Minister's wife thought to reserve this flag for us, and it's something that makes me very proud. When I was 23, I was winding up a master's degree in film at the University of California in Los Angeles. I wrote my thesis in 6 days with the help, generous helping, a handful of mushrooms, I might say. California in the late 60s was groovy, man, and I had chosen a thesis topic about which nothing had ever been written, so nobody could possibly examine me on my thesis. So I wrote it very high, very stoned, very quickly, and sailed through my master's program. But my topic was multi-image filming, which goes back to the very early days of filming and which has a profound and deep history with Canadian pioneers. So there was a lot in my thesis about the early pioneers, about Norman McLaren and Graham Ferguson, Norman Jewison, the IMAX system, which was invented in southwestern Ontario, and about Chris Chapman. And I knew back then, in 1968, that it wasn't all Ontario. It was give us a place to stand and a place to grow. And now I am 79, and here we are, still proud, still growing, and still demanding a place to stand as Canadians, as artists, and as people. I don't know why I'm even telling you this, except that it seems appropriate, especially these days, to every now and then think about what it means to be a Canadian and what it means to demand a place to stand and a place to grow. Because isn't that what the artists do? And isn't it the artists that keep us strong and keep us human and keep things real? And that's part of the reason we're here today. Looking around this room and thinking about why we assembled here this afternoon makes me think about how important and how crucial to our humanity are the artists. The artists are the resistors. They always have been. They're the change makers, the painters, the designers, the photographers, the authors, the poets, the filmmakers, the musicians, and the figure skaters who are both artists and athletes. The arts are the connection, and the arts make us feel. And for those of us who are writers, we can't do what we do without the publishers and the independent bookstores and the amazing publications like The Hum, which comes out of Almont. I don't know how they managed to put such a first-class arts and culture paper out week in or month in and month out, but my hat goes off to them. It's amazing. And I also always take every opportunity to acknowledge Ken White, my publisher at Sutherland House. When I was trying to get my first book, the biography of Toller, published, I wrote what I thought was a brilliantly clever and very erudite, eloquent query letter and sent it to, I Googled agent Canadian nonfiction, and there were a bunch of them that popped up, and I sent my very eloquent, erudite query letter and did not get one single reply. Even though it said, query letter Toller Cranston in the subject line, I would have thought that every Canadian agent worth their salt would have at least looked at it. Well, one agent did call, and he said, your proposal is monumental. Monumental is exactly the word that he used. But he said, you're trying to present your brother as an artist. This is a sports book. Nobody's remotely interested in the art, and nobody's interested in Mexico. So just cut all the art and cut all the Mexico stuff. And also, you know, forget about pictures, because photographs in a book are very expensive. So a little voice in the back of my head was saying, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Because it is a small world and you don't want to burn any bridges. But needless to say, when Ken White said, yes, let's do this book, I was and remain to this day extremely grateful. So to have the first book published by a Canadian, highly respected publisher of nonfiction makes me incredibly proud. So you know, any of you who were here a couple years ago when we launched the first book, who have subsequently bumped across it, know that it was much more than a sports book. And actually, I think in many ways, much more than a biography. Because if you know anything at all about Toller, you know that he was simply an artist on the ice, an artist in the studio, and most of all, in his heart and in his soul. And by the way, that book, which was designed by our very own Robert Hughes, has won 10 International Book Awards. This new book, Artistic Impression, is about to start out on its awards journey. I think it will do really well. So I want to tell you a little bit about how this book came to be. When Toller died in January of 2015, there were more than 400 original works of art on his property. I was the executor. It was my job to deal with them. The paintings, mostly huge, were works of staggering quality. And how do I know? Because they gave me, an absolute nobody, a complete ignoramus when it comes to art. It gave me goosebumps. And not just me, but over the months and years it took to deal with Toller's estate and to deal with his paintings and to live with his paintings, I got to hear the stories of collectors and gallerists and fans and other artists that Toller had mentored. And I began to understand with astonishing power the effect that my brother has had on other people. I was in awe. I saw the passion and respect of other people, and I was proud. So creating a book was kind of obvious, but how to do it? How to find a way to show the world that Toller Cranston was a Canadian artist of undeniable international talent. I certainly wouldn't presume to write about symbolism or what things mean or thematic, whatever. I couldn't and wouldn't be arrogant enough to try to analyze or criticize or critique Toller's work or even explore them. But what I could say was that maybe this or that anecdote or this or that moment in his life or this or that perspective that he shared through his own writings and talkings. He was a big talker. As you know, there's millions of words in print and video that I was lucky enough to be able to draw book. So I let Toller speak in this book. His voice comes through very strongly. There are many, many quotes from Toller. He was very thoughtful about his role as an artist, about how he saw his artistic process, and about what the whole sphere of creativity meant to him. It was my hope with this book that by getting to know the artist, people would be a little bit better able or better equipped to see his work through their own lens, of course, through their own experience and perspectives, but they would have a little bit more insight. People would have a richer, deeper, more complete experience with the artworks. And I believe that is exactly what Toller would have wanted. In a nutshell, this new book, Toller Cranston, Artistic Impressions, is an exploration of the artworks of a man who embodied in everything he did the values of courage, creativity, and expression. Artistic Impressions presents the artworks from the perspective of the gallerists who protected and organized and promoted and supported his work. The artist himself, who, as I've just said, speaks very clearly in this book, the collectors who chose to live with Toller's artwork, and of course the sister who bought for $15 the first piece he ever sold, which was a pen and ink drawing of a dead chicken at age 15. So when I first arrived in Mexico and we began to inventory and catalog everything, there were more than 200 paintings on the property, as I said. And at some point I learned that there were another 200 plus paintings stashed away in a bodega in a warehouse just on the outskirts of San Miguel. And I thought to myself, oh, that must be where he stashed all the crap. But I was completely wrong. There was no crap, not in the property, not in the warehouse. What there was, in addition to 400 plus paintings, was an astonishing array of original creations. Many are featured in this book because the book is not just about the paintings, it's about his artwork. So you'll see the carpets that he designed, the upholstery he designed, the metal sculptures that he arranged to have made, and you will see a much broader spectrum of Toller's art. I'm going to show you a video now that's his estate property in San Miguel. It was a monstrous, huge property. Monstrous probably in every sense of the word. It ran from one street to another. San Miguel is built in the mountains, so everything is from up to down or down to up, depending on your perspective. But remember, when you watch this video, that he painted the paintings, he designed the chandeliers, he designed the carpets and the upholstery and the cushions and the candelabra, and he painted the santos, the saints, and you just have a look at this very creative person.
posterity, who, from the labyrinth beyond time and space, seeks his way out to a clearing, who, from the labyrinth beyond time and space,
As you can see, Toller shopped a lot. He spent every peso he could scrape together pretty much every day of the week. But his driver would tell me that every single thing he bought, he knew exactly where it was going to go. He knew how the light in whatever room, and there were 4 houses on his property, he knew how the light would hit it. He knew exactly where it would fit. And the driver would say, "But Senor Toller, it's impossible. There's no room." Toller would say, "Yes." And Adrienne, the driver, would say Toller would know within an inch exactly where everything was to go. So yes, he bought by the dozen. It also pleased him to support who he viewed very correctly to be the most talented Mexican artisans in every kind of media. So he spent a lot of money in Mexico. So back to the book, once we had a concept and we had the text and we had the images, we needed to turn it into an actual book, a book that would be beautiful and engaging. Book design is an obscure and very little appreciated aspect of the whole business. And there were a zillion decisions that had to be made. And I want to tell you about this incredibly talented designer, Robert Hughes, who we are unbelievably lucky to have here in Arnprior. Robert has done our work for my husband and me for the last 30 years, I think, and has always been able to bring an artistic vision to a project where the design never overpowered the text, where he understood the purpose of the piece. We did a lot of print stuff back in the day. But I invited Robert, I kind of twisted his arm and browbeat him and invited him, and he is in fact here today and has consented to tell you a little bit today, because it's much better coming from him, about just some of the factors that went into the design of this book. So ladies and gentlemen, the unbelievably talented and decent man, Robert Hughes.
Now bear with me, I'm not a public speaker. Dan, Philippa, and I have worked together for almost 30 years, 35 years, and I've gotten to know how they write, and they've gotten to know how I design. So over the years, things have gotten easier, and they've trusted me with many projects. After the death of Toller, it was obvious that this book needed to be created. So this book has been worked on for over 7 or 8 years, but Philippa decided that we should produce the first book, and so this has been on the shelf for quite some time. I've been asked to talk about the design of the book, so let's start with the cover. When we submitted the cover for the first book, I sent 3 designs to the publisher in Toronto, and all 3 were rejected. I was trying to portray Toller, his skating career, alongside his painting career. The publisher wanted the cover to be just Toller, skating, and nothing more. At that point, I don't believe the publisher knew the significance of Toller's painting career was. When we created the cover of this book, I wanted it to be strong, representing Toller's style, creativity, boldness, powerful. I sent 3 designs to Toronto. All 3 were accepted. They preferred design one, which was our choice anyway. And I think the publisher was starting to see the genius of Toller as the painter. The hardcover of the first book was supposed to be black with silver foil. Instead, we got white with silver foil. So we thought it best to match the new book to the first book. Most art books of this nature start with 20 or 30 pages of well-written, intellectual, but very boring text. The typeface is usually small, the line spacing is tight, and I think most readers don't finish the text before jumping to the images of the paintings. I kept saying to Philippa, less is more, keep it short. Philippa writes in bite-sized pieces, which works well with how I design. Clean, clear, simple, and straightforward. I don't usually add extras in design, and with the strength of the photos of this book, we really didn't need to add too many bells and whistles. The first few sections needed something small to separate the text, so we added a few of Toller's designed clip arts, which I think worked very well. Philippa divided the paintings into categories, topics. So we created a design which would be distinct yet similar. Each section starts with a full bleed painting on the left page, a striking image that really encompasses the topic along with the start of the text on the right-hand page. Again, I stressed, keep the writing to a minimum, 2 pages max. We were able to keep the type sizes large and the line spaces wide throughout the book with our audience in mind. We developed pages with 1 image, 2 images, 4 images throughout the chapters, stronger images on one to the page, and lesser images sharing the space. I believe large white space around the paintings added to the ability to focus and enjoy the work. We had many paintings to choose from, and in order to include more, I created section dividing pages with 9 paintings. Philippa added sections closer to the end of the book about Toller's home, other mediums from paint, and she added a section which I don't think I've seen in any other art book, the work displayed in homes and institutions. Philippa has met many people who own Toller originals and asked them for their photos in their homes. It's one of the most enjoyable parts of the book. It's often said, an artist is more famous dead than alive. And I think this will be true of Toller. If Toller had stayed in Toronto or New York, his work would have been celebrated and he would have been had more recognition. But to create the way he did, he needed to be in the hills of Mexico. Someday, the art community will celebrate his originality and creativity, and I hope this book helps solidify this in the future. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the book.
When you watch Robert creating, I'll tell him something and he always thinks and you could hear the wheels grinding and then he just gets to work. So even, we all know that Toller is taller, so there wasn't any point in making the Cranston big. It needed to be taller, and you could see it in a chapter store. If it's in a display at the very back of the store, it stands out. And there's so many clever decisions about balance and taste and scale. So I am just incredibly impressed with Robert. And although I nearly drove him to distraction on the first book with 8 million changes, this one was a real pleasure, probably because there was much less text. I'm going to turn this presentation over now to my incredible friend, Donna Child. She is the owner of the Donna Child Fine Art Gallery in Toronto, and she's the Director of Art and Legacy for Toller International. The Donna Child Fine Art Gallery has been a leading figure in Toronto's art scene for over 30 years, and Donna had has had, I never know which the tense is with Toller. Is it he is my brother or he was my brother? He is an artist, he was an artist. In any case, Donna's had a 25-year relationship with Toller personally, and she will talk more about how they came to be and the impact they had on each other in a moment. But what I want to say about Donna is that I could not have managed the last 10 years without her unfailing support of me personally, her belief in the value of Toller's art, her absolute commitment to Canadian artists of all kinds, but obviously especially for me, for my brother. We talk, Donna's in Toronto, obviously, and I'm extremely thrilled that she's here with us today. We talk at length a couple times a week, and the ideas are off the charts. We just want to get to the point where we have enough of a team that we can execute more of these ideas, but under the circumstances, we think we've done really well. Donna showed me something yesterday that just completely blew my mind, and you could maybe start with a little bit about that because I won't do justice to it. But what Donna showed me online yesterday is absolute proof that the work she and I have done over the last 10 years to keep Toller's name alive is working, it's resonating, and it's building. And that's not like what happens with most artists when they pass away. So without further ado, my friend, my stalwart, my right arm, or maybe right and left, Donna Child.
So before I begin, I just want to say, I'm sure we've all heard of Toller's book, When Hell Freezes Over, Should I Bring My Skates? Based on the weather that's currently happening, I think you could bring his skates down. It's so cold. But I could be in Toronto right now with the 40 centimeters of snow. But anyway, here we are, and I'm just so happy to be here. In 2010, Toller signed an exhibition promotion card for me, and he wrote, "Dear Donna, best wishes, into my will you go." And at the time I thought, oh, Toller, you're always dramatic and always charming and Toller. But, you know, fast forward 16 years, and it feels strangely prophetic because even though Toller died without a will, the opportunity to represent and share his artwork has been an extraordinary privilege and really a kind of inheritance in itself. I've represented Toller's work for over 25 years, and I'm deeply honored to serve as the Director of Art and Legacy for Toller International and to be able to feature his artwork in my gallery in Toronto. Today we celebrate the launch of Toller Cranston Artistic Impressions, and over the next 15 minutes, I'll share some insight into Toller's art and why this book, Artistic Impressions, is so important. But before I begin, I want to thank Philippa for bringing us here today. Toller International and this beautiful book exists because of her vision and her dedication. Philippa has devoted herself to preserving the legacy of Toller, a true Canadian icon, and making sure his work continues to be studied, appreciated, and celebrated, and that the values that Toller lived by continue to inspire us all. So Philippa, thank you. If there's one thing I'd like everybody to take away today, other than a copy of the book, is that Toller was an artist first, not a skater that happened to paint. Long before the world knew him from the ice, he was painting, he was drawing, and he was telling stories through his visual work. Skating made him famous, but art defined who he was. Toller is an important Canadian artist. At a time when Canadian culture often valued restraint, Toller never toned himself down to fit that expectation. He blazed a path. Toller claimed space emotionally, creatively, and theatrically. Toller expanded the idea of what a Canadian artist could be, making room for vulnerability, fantasy, sensuality, and spiritual searching. His paintings reflect the qualities that drew people to him publicly: intensity, drama, imagination, and emotional risk. Every brushstroke carries intention, every composition tells a story, and his art is unapologetically personal. Toller's work spans styles, subjects, and decades, but there's a remarkable consistency. Recurring imagery, symbols, compositional choices appear again and again. He experimented always within a visual language uniquely his own. Toller was a deliberate artist, someone who understood what he wanted to express and how to do it. He was a master. Understanding his visual language allows us to trace his development follow his recurring themes, and see how he transformed influences into something entirely his own. Toller Cranston Artistic Impressions is also important, very important. Artistic Impressions is the first publication devoted entirely to Toller's visual art. Not as an appendix to skating, not as a curiosity, but as the central focus. It documents recurring themes, artistic influences, and the experiences that shaped his vision. While the book shows us what Toller painted, it also shows us a way to better understand of how and why he painted. It gives us the tools to follow his imagination and his artistic lineage, so collectors, scholars, and institutions can truly appreciate and continue to study Toller and the work in context. To understand that lineage, we need to look at artists, traditions, and ideas that shaped him and how he transformed them into something uniquely his own. To understand Toller's visual world, it helps to begin with the early influences that shaped and inspired him. They start with the childhood fables, folk tales, myth, particularly the stories of Hans Christian Andersen, The Wizard of Oz, the Brothers Grimm. These narratives fostered his lifelong attraction to fantasy, symbolism, and emotionally charged storytelling. As he developed as an artist, these influences expanded well beyond literature, drawing from art history, spirituality, and modernism. To give some context to Toller's work, I want to share with you a few of the artists who influenced him, placing their work beside Toller's so you can see where the ideas spark, shift, and become his own. We're going to start with El Greco. El Greco was a Greek artist, painted in the late 1500s, early 1600s, and he, like Toller, was difficult to categorize, but aligned mainly with the Mannerist movement. Toller's work reflects El Greco's influence through expressive elongation, rhythmic groupings, and emotionally charged color. Like El Greco, Toller distorts form to convey inner states rather than physical reality, creating figures and landscapes that feel spiritual, symbolic, and psychologically driven rather than literal. Fra Angelico was a Venetian painter. He created in the late 1300s to the mid 1400s and was part of the early Renaissance period. Toller absorbed Fra Angelico's sense of stillness, grace, and quiet reverence that are found in the portrait-style work and in scenes of interconnected groups. Even within Toller's most theatrical compositions, Toller allows moments of calm and reflection to emerge. Modigliani, who painted in the late 1800s to early 1900s, was Italian and part of the modernist movement, Cubism, Surrealism. Toller's stylized faces in elongated forms recall Modigliani, but where Modigliani's figures feel inward and contemplative, Toller's figures carry emotional tension and a sense of unfolding narrative, drawing the viewer into what comes next. Henri Matisse, painted in the late 1800s and mid-1900s, he was a French Fauvist painter. Like Matisse, Toller used non-naturalistic color for rhythm and emotional impact rather than description. Where Matisse celebrates decorative freedom, Toller's color heightens sensuality, drama, and storytelling. Marc Chagall, painted in the late 1800s, mid-1900s, and was part of the modernist movement. Dreamlike imagery, floating figures, and symbolic storytelling connect Toller to Chagall. But where Chagall's figures drift through memory and dream, Toller grounds fantasy in the physical body, using gesture and movement to anchor meaning. And of course, Picasso, painted in the late 1800s to the late 1800s to the late 1960s. He was a Spanish modernist painter. Picasso's fearlessness resonated with Toller. He was influenced by Picasso's bold approach to form and perspective. Like Picasso, he stretched and twisted the human figure to express movement and emotion. Egon Schiele was an Austrian modernist painting. He only painted for a very short period of time in the late 1800s to the very early 1900s. Cranston did not just admire Egon Schiele, he spoke his artistic language. He adopted Schiele's uncomfortable line, the jagged, nervous energy that prioritizes emotion over anatomical perfection. Schiele, like Toller, was noted for his self-portraits. Sorry, I think I'm missing a slide, but it's okay. Schiele also painted himself in the majority of his portraits, and Toller always said that every face he had ever painted in his life had been a self-portrait. So these are just a few of the artistic influences that gave Toller his foundation. But beyond other artists, there are also cultural and thematic influences that he returned to time and time again. And it's through these recurring elements that we see how he made inspiration deeply personal, theatrical, and rhythmic. 18 of these elements are explored in the book, but I'm going to just briefly discuss a few of them. One of the most recognizable recurring themes in Toller's art, of course, is the strawberries. Toller had a lifelong obsession with strawberries. It began after observing the home decor of famed skating coach Nancy Rush in the late 1970s. Over time, strawberries became far more than just a fruit in his work. They symbolized vulnerability, desire, indulgence, and sensuality. They were never decorative, they were deeply personal and recurring. So of course, we move to the next very popular theme in Toller's work, and that would be skating. For Toller, skating became a subject matter at a pivotal moment when he left professional skating to dedicate himself fully to painting. Skating was part of his DNA. He didn't paint skating because he was a skater. He painted it to place memory onto canvas. As Toller said, the skating paintings were a way for me to purge myself of the residue that is still there. Twist of the torso, the reach of the limb, the suspension of body in space, all become emotional and psychological language in Toller's art. In Toller's late teens and 20s, skating took Toller across Europe. He visited museums and galleries at formative moments in his career. Much of Toller's work emanates from the Silk Road aesthetics: China, Central Asia, the Middle East, India. He had a deep desire to visit Uzbekistan, which I don't believe he ever actually did visit, but he was deeply influenced by their aesthetic. The artists there are largely anonymous, but the patterns, borders, layered surfaces, and embellishments in their work inspire me. The powerful figures, especially the Fergana horses, which we see often in Toller's paintings, embody strength, endurance. These elements are not decorative, they reinforce myth, narrative, and character. During Toller's first skating tour, which took him to Russia, he came to understand that strong Russian and Eastern European influences have always found their way into his paintings, and that the tours of the galleries and museums only strengthen that influence. Russian and Eastern European influences appear in both style and spirit of Toller's work, seen in his elongated figures, theatrical compositions, and a mood of romantic melancholy, longing, and idealized beauty. These influences added emotional gravity and theatricality, complementing his imagination and narrative skill. So now that we have some insight into what influenced Toller, what actually defines a masterful Toller painting? Toller created over 20,000 artworks. Some soar with clarity and emotional resolution, while others become experimental and explore or take risks. These experimental pieces pave the way for his highest achievements, revealing the process behind his most exceptional art. So what actually defines a masterful painting? The strongest Toller paintings share a few things. The paintings feel intentional. He is not searching, he's deciding. The painting clearly shows the emotion and the idea. What Toller felt and wanted us to feel comes through immediately. The composition feels balanced and finished. His familiar themes are used thoughtfully. Artistic Impressions features a sampling of Toller's masterful paintings. These works stand on their own, beyond biography or fame, and show Toller at the height of his artistic intention and vision. Recognizing these qualities also matter when we look at Toller's art in the context of market and legacy. It helps collectors, scholars, and institutions assess, value, authenticate, and establish historical significance, which brings us naturally to Toller International appraisals and the very important Catalogue Raisonné, which is underway. Since Toller's passing, the demand for his work has grown, and so has the value. His artwork is strong, it's distinctive, and continues to resonate with collectors around the world. And I'll just touch for a moment on what Philippa had mentioned earlier. There are a number of websites that basically follow the market trends for international artists, and Toller is one of them. And we, in the last 3 years, really since the launch of Toller International and the incredible things that Philip has been doing, have seen a tremendous increase, not only in the value of Toller's work, but in the actual ranking in terms of where he ranks in terms of international sales at auction, and the way that he's recognized internationally. It's really fabulous to see. And we're also starting to see the spread of Toller's work at auctions around the world. Of course, here in Canada, United States, Mexico, but also in Europe. So that's a wonderful thing to have happen. We're also very excited to announce that the Catalogue Raisonné, which is an official, comprehensive, and ongoing record of Toller's artworks, is underway. We have a planned launch date of spring 2026. It'll be managed by Toller International and will be available online. The catalog will basically be an ongoing publication that features as many of Toller's paintings as possible. Collectors can submit their Toller artworks through Toller International website, and you'll receive a certificate with a catalog number. All new submissions will be added continuously, and it'll keep the record current. Toller International also offers appraisals which establish value, protect estates, and document authenticity. So I hope I have been able to achieve my goal, and that we all remember that Toller was an artist first. And as stated as on his headstone, Toller Artist. He painted with courage, imagination, and emotional honesty, creating a body of work that is authentically his own. Artistic Impressions gives us the lens to see that work fully. It shows a painter who found his voice, took risks, explored themes consistently over decades, and left a legacy that continues to inspire. Today, through this book, the Catalogue Raisonné, and all of us who continuously study, collect, and celebrate his art, Toller Cranston's mastery and vision live on. And I want to thank you all for the privilege of sharing this very small part of Toller's art story with you. Thank you. So I'm often asked by collectors who are new to Toller's art, where do these paintings hang? And it's, are they in private homes? Are they in corporate offices? And I think, as we said earlier, one of the most compelling sections of Artistic Impressions is the artworks in their environment, which shows Toller's paintings hanging in situ. I am delighted to introduce Ian and Joseph, who are longtime Toller collectors who can speak to what it's like to live with his artwork and why they chose to include Toller's artwork in their exceptional collection of art.
we'll get you all set.
So, Philippa, I don't know why I'm here, because with Philip, I thought I was coming to speak about growing up in the community of Douglas, Ontario, and the trauma of learning how to milk cows until I was 18. But I guess I'm here, and I was, what can I say, Ian?
I think you should focus.
And I guess I should just focus. So we are delighted to be here, Philippa. You were supposed to laugh hysterically at that. I will prompt you throughout our chat. But anyway.
Well, we do have quite an eclectic collection of paintings in general in our home, but the truth is that the taller paintings by far attract the most attention by all of our guests that come. My first encounter with Toller's work actually goes back to the 1980s, shortly after I arrived in Ottawa. And I was walking down Bank Street there, and I happened to step into a gallery, and there I saw a whole plethora of his strawberry-oriented paintings, and I was really taken aback at the time. What struck me even then was how unmistakably like Toller the skater who I had followed, the paintings were. They were amazingly creative, they were playful, theatrical, deeply personal, and utterly confident. Now, back then, it was many years before I could actually afford to actually get a Toller painting, so.
And yes, it was his first love.
It's
and
true.
it would be many years before he could afford me.
That's true. Well, fast forward to 2005 and our very first purchase, which you see up here, this is entitled Night Choir. We discovered it quite by accident. We were heading out to an open house at the Enriched Bread Artists Studio in Ottawa, and we were late, and we arrived just as it's closing. But somebody said to us, Toller Cranston is having a show at Philip Craig's studio not far from here. So we headed off there, and we were joyful to actually get to meet Toller, who happened to be at this vernissage.
So, Choir, which was the signature piece of the show, immediately spoke to us. So when you entered Philip Craig's studio, that was right there. So you imagine opening the door and voila. And of course, we were mesmerized. Much of the space,
No.
Follow your notes. Okay, so Night Choir, it's calming, it's soothing, yet it's full of life. The vibrant colors and the fine details spark joy, not only for us, but for everyone who actually gets to sit in its presence.
So here's the picture in situ. It really is the showstopper of our living room. Much of that space has actually been chosen to complement the painting. And in fact, in our house, we tend to choose our furniture to complement our paintings as opposed to the other way around. All right.
God, I hate notes.
Next. So we later purchased these two paintings at Donna's Gallery, in fact. It is called Geisha with Animals and Royal Guard. We can't say for sure what Toller had intended, but we really felt that they needed to face each other as they do here.
And we loved all the animals in the painting, each one having its own personality. To us, the guard keeps a watchful eye on his betrothed and his her menagerie. But what I love about this picture to the left is that absolutely adorable little creature holding on for dear life. There's so much passion and emotion in that. It's like every time I sit during cocktail hour, I have chats with that animal.
These paintings embody the formality of that room. To us, the guard also feels like its protector. Together, they impart a sense of comfort and safety to the room, within our own little castle.
It's whimsical and exuberant with so much happening that our grandchildren, oh, that's the wrong
one, Joe.
So normally I do not go by notes, I just talk. And most of my friends say stick to the script.
Well, this is called Animal Kite Flyer, and it hangs in our dining room and has become its signature piece.
Whimsical and exuberant with so much happening that our grandchildren are completely drawn to it, and I am forever reminding them, look with your eyes and not with your fingers.
The magical party unfolding inside this painting's frame really sets the stage for many of our celebrations in this room. So, living with Toller's work, what strikes us most is how alive it is. These paintings don't fade into the background. They continue to reveal themselves over time. And yet, we don't think our collection is quite finished. There is actually one more Toller painting that we do have our eye on, Donna.
Which is where I need to sell some of my jewelry, given what his command, and rightfully so.
But the daily joy that we get from these paintings is worth it. That is the power of Toller's work. Once it enters your life, it becomes part of your story too. And Joseph and I are very grateful to live with these paintings and grateful that this book helps ensure Toller's remarkable vision continues to be seen, shared, and celebrated. So thank you, Philippa, and thank you, Donna.
And Philippa, thank you for being an extraordinary sister that is working so diligently in ensuring Toller's place in the world. And Donna, you're a gem.
Say one little thing when Ian pointed out the little adorable creature clinging at the leg of the geisha painting. There's a chapter in the book, in the Artistic Impressions book, as Robert said, there are 18 different elements that we've looked at the paintings, but one of my favorites is unnatural creatures and strange companions. And that there's a story in the book about Toller would get up in Mexico at 4 or 5 in the morning because it was cool then and there weren't any bill collectors and there weren't any tourists coming to visit. And he would paint. He'd be in his studio early. But he lived next to an enormous park in San Miguel. And at night, the opossum, the tlacuache, they're called in Mexico, would creep along the walls and come to his studio. And they'd creep because they'd be drawn by the light. And they'd come inside. So I can't say for sure that all those little pointy-nosed, rat-like, rodent-y sort of magical creatures are inspired by the possums that would watch him paint, but it's entirely possible. And I want to also acknowledge a young, perhaps prospective authoress who's with us tonight, which is Georgia, who has a little story in one of the chapters. Georgia was 10. And she would like me to tell you that it's on page 159, and she is available for autographs later in the day. So Toller demanded a place to stand and a place to grow on the ice and in the studio. He once said a very important thing that he learned in painting and in skating was how not to be afraid, how to live one's life without inhibition. He said you have to say what you want to say, stand up for what you believe in, and go after things and never be afraid. Toller was fearless, he was creative, he was dedicated, his work ethic was off the charts. His belief in his destiny was unshakable. I believe that Canadians share these values, and that Canada stands for these values, and that the artists, Jack and Jerry and the other artists that are here with us today, are the ones who, in the words of my friend Charlie Angus, will kick at the darkness until it bleeds light. I have spent the last number of years deeply immersed in my brother's life and achievements, and I've heard powerfully affecting stories about him from so many people, well-known and less well-known. Toller was a truly extraordinary talent, and I believe that he deserves to be remembered. He was a resistor. Back in the day, he pushed against the stodgy figure skating establishment, and he introduced artistry and creativity that changed the sport forever. Now, in fact, I was at the national championships for one session of juniors a couple weeks ago in Gatineau, and Toller's dear friend Haig was there, and he pointed out that now, at the age of 11, 12, and 13, every skater is learning to hurl themselves on the ice at the end of their program or start from a position on the ice. So Toller, this is 50 years on, and now it is becoming a bit of a cliche, but it wasn't back in the day. People thought he was outrageous, but now it's kind of great. Early on, the fans understood what Toller was doing. They appreciated it, they saw it, they felt it, and they knew. And it took a while for the judges to come around, but eventually they did. Toller changed figure skating, there's no doubt. But more than that, much, much more than that, he inspired people. When he died of a fatal heart attack at his home in Mexico in 2015, the messages that flooded in weren't about his skating or his medals or the deeply flawed judging or about his 20,000 paintings. People were saying, Toller made me brave. Toller made me dream big. Toller made me aspire to more. Toller made me believe in what I could do. Toller made me believe I could live as I must. And that is what artists do. They touch us, they move us, and they inspire us. But it doesn't mean that artists don't have doubts. It doesn't mean that they're not vulnerable. I'm going to ask my friend Jeffrey to read a piece that Toller wrote on the eve of an exhibition in Toronto. Jeffrey Fulton has come from Toronto and is reading this piece at my request. Jeffrey. Here we are.
6 o'clock, an hour still to go. I almost wish it would never pass. Is this shirt all right? I can't decide. Tonight, a whole year's work will be on trial. Suppose nobody comes except faithful friends. Will I ever be able to convince anybody I'm not a skater who paints? What about the critics? Will they come? How will they judge my work? Perhaps I've been too close to the paintings, too subjective. It's possible, yet I am certain that my work has evolved, improved. But people may prefer the older style. The minutes pass so slowly. This is so different from a performance. I can only wait to be judged and explain. No, I refuse to explain anything. Everyone must interpret for themselves. Every person must relate to the painting from their own point of view. Suppose nothing sells. How will I ever pay the framer? My hands are trembling. I have never felt so alone and so helpless in my life. I feel like phoning somebody. Who? What would I say? What do I expect them to do? No one can help now. Well, I've done my best. I couldn't have worked any harder. I put everything I had into it. I have to stand behind these pieces. By 11 o'clock tonight, I will know what other people think. My God, how slowly the time ticks past, creeping forward. Whatever happens, I have to look relaxed and confident. I have to generate enthusiasm. It's amazing to me. Thank you, Philippa, first for allowing me to read these words. There's so many lessons in here. And as I was preparing, I spent some time with Toller via video like we did. And it's just incredible to hear his voice and the up and down of his emotion. And there's a lesson in there in that that's just part of the gig. I think artists have to go through that and accept that that's going to be part of it. Thank you.
Toller wrote that in 1973. He was 24 years old. Many times over the years that followed, he would say, I always feel that for anybody who is not familiar with my work, if I could just show you one more painting, you could understand me more, and you'd be able to relate more to the work. He was an artist. His tombstone in San Miguel is simply inscribed Toller, artist, zero tolerance, 1949 to 2015. No last name, no explanation necessary. He wanted his work to speak for itself. He wanted people to connect with the paintings, and he wanted people to understand him. And that brings us back to today, to this moment, in this theater. In these days of Canada Strong and Elbows Up, a book devoted to the artworks of Toller Cranston, a genuine Canadian talent, who, 11 years after his death, continues to inspire, is both timely and needed. His messages for people to be brave and creative, to chase their destiny, to dream big, and to do the work are still important. I've been chasing my destiny myself these last few years. I was in my 60s when Toller passed away. Now I find myself with 3 Toller-related books under my belt, a legacy that is growing every day, and an active and highly satisfying side gig as a keynote speaker, connecting audiences on strategies for survival when an estate goes completely off the rails. I have messages to share about survival. I have cautionary tales about persistence and courage. I have colorful stories about a Canadian icon, and I have huge respect for the artists and gallerists and publishers and film distributors and for everything that they do. My next book, which will come out later this spring, is about my 10-year journey with Toller's estate. It is called Executor, Battle Scars and Wisdom. The long-winded but highly descriptive subtitle is, and I quote, Lessons from the 10-year soul-destroying, precedent-setting, financially horrifying, utterly uplifting journey of the Toller Cranston estate. The story has elements of blackmail, extortion, Mexican thugs, greed, utter stupidity, over-the-top artwork, a Canadian legend, and one former film teacher, goat farmer sister. I am delighted, and I am sure that Toller would as well, that the Toller Cranston estate of has become a precedent in the Estates Bar of Canada. Now, 10 years after my brother passed away, I am committed to preserving his legacy. Donna and I have established Toller International, tollerinternational.com. It's pretty amazing, check it out. And we're working to take the messages and the values that Toller stood for to a new generation of Canadians who don't know or have forgotten that Canada has always had independent, creative trailblazers, artists, athletes. For example, Toller did an album cover for Joni Mitchell. He appeared in Leonard Cohen's film, I Am a Hotel. He worked on Stars on Ice, which was produced by Alex Trebek. There's a line in the musical Hamilton that says, "Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?" And I've thought about that, of course, many times. If Toller had lived another 10 or 20 years, as one might have expected, he was only 65, I'm quite sure that I would be dead. There wouldn't be 3 Toller books in the works, and we wouldn't be having a freezing cold Sunday afternoon in Arnprior in the theater. It's the inspirational stories and the reality of who we are as Canadians, what we believe, and what we will stand up for that will get us through. So by supporting Toller and this book, and by supporting Toller International, and by supporting artists, you are leading the way in challenging Canadians to dream big, pursue our destiny, be who we are, and stand up. And we are, and we're grateful. Before we go to questions and answers, I really want to acknowledge the team that's helped me put this together. First of all, of course, Kevin Marshall, who's made this theater available, and Sean, the amazing AV guy from Pembroke, and his capable assistants. But most of all, the extraordinary community that Dan and I live in, our neighbors, Nick and Janet Shepherd, Jim and Barbara Armstrong, who are just constantly remarkable. We've grown to depend on each other, love and respect each other, and I couldn't function if it weren't for them. It's absolute necessity when I say, Nick, I can't fix this plug. Nick, I can't put these wheels on the thing. Nick, I can't do this. And I like to think that occasionally when I take cookies, we kind of get square. So acknowledgement to my team who are amazing. To Donna, thank you. To Jeffrey, to Robert, who I know nearly killed him to speak, but I'm so glad that he did, and I'm so incredibly proud of this book. I hope that you'll have an opportunity to take a look at it. And now we'd be super happy to take any questions.